So by now, you have probably heard that Jerry Springer, who is best known for hosting the Jerry Springer Show for 27 years, has died. And I saw some people yesterday, like right after he died, like I'm filming this Friday, he just died on Thursday, so it's pretty recent still. I saw people like openly celebrating his death because he was exploitative or whatever. And I gotta be real with you, I think those people are wrong. And I think Jerry Springer had a genuinely positive impact on a lot of people my age and older. I think younger people don't quite understand like just how big this dude's cultural footprint was, because to you his show just wasn't that big a deal. It was something that a lot of you, I'm assuming, have never watched, even though it was on the air when you were around. Like, it went off the air in 2018, and they still do reruns of it sometimes. But you just never really watched it, because when you're my age or older and you're like homesick from school, you couldn't just go on the internet as easily as you can now. There wasn't streaming. Video games weren't as common as they are now, at least not if you were poor like I was. And so you just watched whatever crap was on TV, and one of those shows was the Jerry Springer Show. And this show was trash. It was peak trash. Like, it was a flaming pile of garbage that somehow produced a smell like flowers. I don't know how to describe it. It was basically people, or when it started off, it was trying to be like an actual talk show with like serious political commentary and stuff, but after a while they just said, okay, this isn't working. So they just brought on like regular people instead of celebrity guests, and these were people that had like very serious problems in their relationships, like they were cheating on each other, or they just found out their brother was gay or something like that, and it was basically just them trying to hash it out. And sometimes it would blow up in hilarious ways. Like, guests would constantly fight with each other, yell at each other. Women would just flash the camera randomly at times. Like, I'm not joking when I say that the first time I saw boobs was when I was a young kid, like 9 or 10, and somehow a friend of a friend like had a VHS copy of Jerry Springer Too Hot for TV. It was like the uncensored cut, and we watched that, and like we should not have been watching that. But yeah, that was like the first time I saw boobs, and just, it was hilarious. I really can't describe to you how hilarious it was. Like, on the internet nowadays, we have like the subreddit public freakouts and stuff like that, where we just watch people make asses of themselves in public, and we all watch it because it's hilarious, at least some of the time. But before I get into that a little bit more and explain like why it's not exploitative, because I did see people genuinely celebrating Jerry Springer's death because, oh, he's exploitative or whatever. But number one, even if it was exploitative, that's really not enough reason to celebrate, okay? Save that energy for, like, the Tucker Carlsons and Steven Crowders of the world, and, you know, various politicians and stuff. Like, save that kind of energy, because if you're celebrating, like, the death of Tucker Carlson, whenever that comes, and Jerry Springer, then normal people are gonna look at that and see, like, the wide gap between these two and just think you're kind of crazy and celebrating death of everyone you dislike even a little bit. So we shouldn't do that. But also, number two, it's just not exploitative. And I'll get more to that in a minute. Sorry, went off topic. But Jerry Springer was more than just the host of this show. You know, he was an interesting guy with an interesting life. Like, his parents were Jews who fled Germany, and his grandparents did not and were killed in the Holocaust. And Jerry himself was born in London and then came to the US as a very young child. And he became a lawyer for a while. Like, he practiced law for a while before he entered politics. He tried running for Congress, didn't win. He tried running for governor of Ohio at one point, didn't win. He did get elected to the city council of Cincinnati, and he eventually resigned because, and this is totally true, he got caught paying a prostitute with a personal check. And the thing is, his later political campaigns used that in their ads. Like, they just came right out and said, yep, I got caught trying to pay a prostitute with a personal check. And if I won't lie about that, if I will tell the truth about that, then I will tell the truth about anything. You can trust me. Like, that was an actual thing he did. And, you know, he was also mayor of Cincinnati for a while. He was a news anchor. Like, he did a lot of stuff before the Jerry Springer Show became a thing. And, like, that's what he's known for, though. But the thing that really sets it aside from other shows which it later inspired, like, the Maury Povich and Jeremy Kyle and Steve Wilkins, like, those shows were kind of similar in this format, where it takes normal people having very serious relationship issues and just kind of points a camera at them and lets them try and hash it out. But the difference with Jerry Springer is that he understood that this was stupid and meant to just be kind of lighthearted. Like, he made cameos on other movies and shows making fun of himself. He was in one of the Austin Powers movies, I forget which, and that was one of the funniest parts of that movie. He was on an episode of The Simpsons, and again, he's making fun of his show and himself. So he understood that, like, okay, yeah, this is stupid, let's not take it too serious. But even more than that, he always knew what to focus on, and he always pulled it back when it started to get a little too dark or a little too heavy. Like, the joke was almost never laughing at the people who were guests on his show. Like, sometimes it was, but usually it was just laughing at the ridiculousness of the situation. It's not, oh, this guy is gay, but he's married, and his wife doesn't know. Like, the joke was, okay, the ridiculous lengths he's going to while cheating on his wife with men. Whenever we were laughing at one of the guests, it was because they had some sort of deep character flaw that made it kind of okay to laugh at them. Like, they wouldn't stop cheating on their spouse, or they were abusive to their kids, or they were racist, or, something like that. Like something where it's like, okay, yeah, we're laughing at this person.
Here is Irv Rubin and his bodyguards, Al and Joseph.
One of the most famous episodes of the show was the episode where he had on a neo-Nazi and his kids, and we're laughing at that guy the whole time. Like, Jerry Springer just humiliated this man in front of the entire world and made him look like a neurotic dipshit. And moreover, that episode is actually the only time that Jerry himself got into a fight with one of the guests. Like, guests fought each other all the time. Occasionally they would, like, get into fights with audience members. Like, they'd throw chairs and shit. Like, really, if you're a young person who has not watched the Jerry Springer Show, like, there's tons of clips on YouTube and stuff, and again, they do show reruns sometimes. Watch some of this show. It is fucking amazing. It genuinely is. But, yeah, like, he got into a fight with a Nazi just on television. And even then, he was way nicer to that guy than I ever would have been. Because, like, before the fight started, he tells him, I don't hate you. I hate what you've done to your children, though. And it's kind of interesting. And, after that, they did cut to commercial break. And when they came back from commercial break, Jerry Springer went on this really interesting monologue about hate and bigotry and what that leads to. Because, again, his grandparents were killed in the Holocaust. His parents fled Germany. He understands where this kind of shit leads. He was not a fan of Nazis. And he just had a very thoughtful, very empathetic way of looking at it. And he kind of goes into, like, what led that dude down the path a little bit, but also mostly just like, hey, at the end of the day, we're all people. And that was probably the main theme of his show, if I could call that a theme, I guess. But that was something Jerry himself definitely understood. He was an empathetic guy. Like, at the end of every show, he had this segment called Final Thoughts, where he would go over, like, again, his final thoughts and, like, his genuine, serious thoughts about what we can learn from this. And I actually learned some stuff from his show, not just from the final thoughts, but also just watching these people and seeing they were like cautionary tales, like, just, okay, let's not act this way. Let's try and be nice to the people I love, that sort of thing. And there's one specific final thought from, I don't think it was his last show, but it was one of his last shows, where he's just saying, hey, at the end of the day, we're not that different. I am not a lot different from the guests I have on this show. I dress nicer and I have more money, but I'm not that different from them. We all want to be loved. We all hurt. We all do things we regret and hurt our loved ones without meaning to. and just things like that. Like, he had this very thoughtful, cogent, empathetic argument to make, or maybe argument isn't the right word, but it was very thoughtful and cogent and empathetic, and that was the case for a lot of his final thoughts. He had final thoughts where he would talk about guests who were secretly strippers or escorts or something, and their family members hated them for it and ostracized them for it and stuff like that. Excuse me. But he would come right out at the end and say, hey, these are people trying to make a living. That's hard to do. We all just want to live in this world. These are like people trying to support their kids, trying to get themselves through college and stuff. And at the end of the day, they are human beings who deserve rights and deserve protection, and just things like that. Like, the couple of times he talked about that, unironically, did more to advocate for the rights of sex workers than all of the progressive activists on Twitter combined. Like, unironically, because he was more mainstream than any of us will ever be. If you actually watch his show for a while, it's clear that Jerry himself was a very thoughtful, intelligent, and empathetic man. And I unironically learned to be a better person from his show. Like, I learned that you can hurt your loved ones even without realizing it. I've learned that you should be true and honest to yourself. Because here's the thing. Back in the 90s, when the show first started and was kind of at its peak, he had, like, gay and transgender people on his show. Like, it was them coming out to their family, or their family trying to hash out their differences with them and stuff. And I don't think a lot of you understand just how much hate there was for gay people in the 90s. It wasn't aimed quite as much at trans people because the propaganda machine hadn't decided to target them yet. Like, that was only, 2 years ago that they decided to start doing that. But, that was, when the AIDS crisis was going on, or not long after the AIDS crisis was going on, and it was still viewed as a gay man's disease and like a punishment from God, and just the absolute vitriol that everyone in the mainstream treated them with was just hard to even fathom nowadays. But Jerry just brought them on and treated them with, honestly, way more dignity and respect than anyone else was doing back then, and more than a lot of people would do today even. And that's insane. And he didn't treat them with kid gloves, though. That is an important thing to note. Like, he treated them as regular, flawed human beings. And he did that to everybody, regardless of, race, sexuality, religion, everything. Like, they had flaws. We all do. And they weren't given special treatment or anything. And I think that's more fair to them, because, gay and trans people or any other minority should not have to be held to, an impossible standard. They shouldn't have to be paragons of virtue. They shouldn't... every time they're represented in media, they shouldn't have to be paragons of virtue. They should just be people. And Jerry Springer unironically did a great job with that sort of thing. Again, the joke was never, haha, look at this person who is weird. The joke was the ridiculousness of the situation itself, or laughing at the, bigotry of people when that was relevant to the topic, or relevant to the discussion. And we did have a lot of weirdos on that show, but again, they were just being themselves in front of the world and saying, hey, if you don't like it, you can go fuck yourself. And that's inspirational in a weird way. And again, to all the people still claiming this was exploitative, at the end of the day, these people were volunteers. They volunteered to be on this show, and they were adults. They didn't have a gun to their head saying, hey, you have to embarrass yourself on national television or I'll kill you. They made a decision. It wasn't always a smart decision, but we all do dumb shit like that. And I don't know if this show really helped anybody reconcile with their loved ones or anything. It might have a couple of times. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But it taught me some things. It taught a lot of other people some things. And even if it didn't do that, it was very entertaining. It brought joy into our lives. We all have very short lives to live, which are just full of hardship and misery. And Jerry was like a little bright light out there, And, I don't know. I don't really have anywhere else to go with this. I do just want to take a moment to point out that one episode where he got into a fight with a Nazi was also the origin of the iconic chant. The audience in every episode would chant, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. And that's the most iconic part of the show. Even if you've never watched it, you probably know that. And that was the episode where it started, because he got into a fight with the Nazi and then the audience started cheering for him. And he and the producers just liked it, so they just had the audience do that for the rest of the show's runtime, which was, 20 some odd years at that point. And again, at the end of every episode, he had his final thoughts, which were serious and empathetic and intelligent. And he always signed off with the same thing. He said, take care of yourself and each other. And actually, that predates the show, actually. I found that out while doing a little bit of reading up for this rambling mess of a video that I'm doing. It started when he was a news anchor, actually. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't like the idea of somebody celebrating his death, Again, even if you thought he was trashy, he never hid from the fact that he was trashy or that his show was trashy. And Jerry, if you're hearing this somewhere or seeing this somewhere, maybe you would have preferred to be more respected as a talented filmmaker or talented showrunner. Maybe you would have preferred to be viewed in the same light as like Letterman or Conan O'Brien or something like that. And you're not. You're not super well respected in the mainstream. You were very successful. Like, you took all those fights straight to the bank. But still, I think even if you were not super well regarded, you brought joy into a lot of people's lives. You brought joy into my life. You taught me some things. And I appreciate you for that. And I'm going to miss you when you're gone. I know a lot of, again, young people probably don't understand how much or how big a part of the cultural landscape you were for a while and how much indirect influence you've had over the past 30 years. But I'm going to miss you. And I don't really have anything else to say here. But until next time, take care of yourself and each other.